Welcome to the introduction to prototyping and development with WEBCON BPS. In this video, I will touch on key elements of defining and delivering applications in the system, and I'll also show you how does it work in practice step by step. Before we start, please note that we expand on many topics raised here in our other videos. They will be linked in the description section down below. Later in this video, you'll see how to create an application from scratch, including end-user interface, and I'll specifically focus on forms, business logic, which includes workflow and business rules, reporting capabilities, and also extraction of data from other systems. But first, let's talk about application creation process. Traditionally, the role of the software starts at the implementation and delivery phase. We focus on that too, and we've spent many years on perfecting the interface and perfecting the tools to enable the most efficient way of delivering applications. And we still continuously improve them to meet your requirements. However, we also understand that this is not the end of the application lifecycle, because the software should also help with gathering requirements, providing the analysis, and prototyping of applications. And this is where we involve citizen developers or citizens in general, business analysts, process owners, and any other people that are involved in the initial scoping of the application. And also, we foster culture of continuous improvement by providing series of tools to let users providing feedback and improvement ideas. In this video, we'll mostly focus on the first two parts. However, you can also find other videos that we have that expand on other topics as well. What is highly unique about WEBCON is that we provide a very intuitive and graphical way of collecting application requirements. The tool focuses on the business logic, data collection and presentation, and any other activities, actions, and integration points that need to be set up for the process to achieve its business goal. Every aspect of the application can either be configured and visualized or described by the end users. It does not require any technical knowledge or any notation standard, and we call it the designer desk. And one of the main reasons why our clients enjoy it so much is that it automatically turns the collected information into a functional prototype that can immediately be tested and improved. It simply saves them a ton of time on meetings, compiling specifications and diagrams by producing a tangible result that is easy to understand and critique at this early stage of the project. What's even better, all the work put into the analysis is easily reused by the power users as they receive the prototype and build on top of it. To make their life easier, everything is documented since the system can automatically generate the specification in a Word or PDF file. And even after the go-live phase, business users still can provide small changes and like translations or field name modifications. I'll also show you how analysis and prototyping work during the demonstration part of this video, but first, let's talk about the second phase of the project, which is the implementation. What you need to know about WEBCON is that it's built differently. Unlike most other solutions on the market that offer separate modules for workflows, forms, reporting, and others, WEBCON offers all of those at once. It's not only convenient, but more importantly, all of the mentioned modules already work together and don't require any integration effort. That shortens the development time, but also significantly increases the application resilience as there are simply fewer moving pieces to manage and maintain. The main purpose of WEBCON is to provide enterprise-grade solutions at scale. Therefore, with a model-driven approach, the system ensures UI consistency across all applications and interfaces. And as a result, employees only learn the business process that is encapsulated within the application, instead of learning the overall application interface and behavior over and over. From a business perspective, it means swift user adoption, and the IT can actually focus on delivering more applications instead of answering basic questions. Another reason why clients choose WEBCON is the ability to introduce swift and problem-free modifications into running applications. Not only does it make power users' life easier, but it ensures that applications stay relevant and up to date, while the organization can effectively support the culture of continuous improvement. If you'd like to know more about instant change technology, we expand on that in other linked videos. With all that, every application created in WEBCON is by default scalable, auditable, and governable. The unique architecture of the platform ensures that proper mechanisms are in place regardless of the size and the creator of the application. And by the way, they don't require any extra effort. Last, but definitely not least, we understand people. We know that developers hate writing documentation and how much time is wasted on reverse engineering when documentation is lacking, outdated, or simply not there. That's why you can generate documentation for every application as well. And you can do it every time the configuration is changed to make sure the documentation is always up to date. But enough talking, let me briefly show you how analysis and implementation really work. We are in the designer desk, and this is where we will define the requirements for our application, and by doing so, create a working prototype of it. And today I want to create a simple application to assign credit limits to the companies that we cooperate with. So let's start with designing the workflow. Defining the process in WEBCON basically answers the question, what happens in our credit limit management process step by step? And those steps are visualized on the board, and you can drag and drop them, and every single one of them will have a name, and the name will indicate the status of our credit limit management workflow. On top of that, we can provide the description for the end users to let them know what is expected of them to do. And additionally, we can define the description for the purpose of documentation. So let me quickly fill out the whole process and we'll move forward. With all of the steps already defined, now we have to design how users should move around our workflow. And we do that by drawing paths between the steps to connect them. Similarly as previously, you can assign a name. And again, this is important because the name of the path will be later on visualized as a button that user has to click to go somewhere. So let's name this one Send for Approval. And then we can describe what happens whenever user chooses this path. And additionally, we can decide on how the task should be assigned. So in this case, I'll select the business role and I'll paste the same text. So let me complete the paths and then I'll show you more. As you can see, I've configured all of the paths, and in WEBCON we can go forward, but also we can backwards with the case. We have the true state engine, so it doesn't really matter. You can freely move around the steps the way you designed. But now I want to focus your attention on this flow control step, because this is where the system will direct the case automatically. And in our particular example of credit limits, I want this to happen based on the value of the credit limit. And if it's over 500,000, I want this to go to additional CEO approval. And if it's less, I want this to be approved right away. So let me fill out the description accordingly. Once we have the path configuration done, now we can think of certain activities that need to happen whenever our process is executed. You have plenty of actions to choose from. In this particular example, I'll just use the simplest one, which is the notification, and I'll drag and drop it onto the path whenever CFO rejects the suggested credit limit to inform the requestor that this actually happened and certain correction is required. As you can see, we do not visualize this action directly on diagram except this small icon, because we do not want to clutter the diagram with excess amount of information. Instead, it's just an indication that something will happen in the background. So with the notification, we'll provide the proper description, and then we'll move forward. And you do the same process with every single action that you want to be executed. As a business user, you do not have to configure it. The description is enough for the purpose of analysis and prototyping. Now let's get to the form. So this is where we'll define what kind of data is needed for our process to complete its business goal. As you can see, we have many different types of fields to be selected, and I'll choose autocomplete choice field as my configuration example. Just as in every other case, you can give it a name, and in this case, I want this to be company to be selected from the list of available values. We can provide a tooltip for end users to additionally explain what is required of them to do. So let's say select the proper company from the list. Then we can describe the behavior of this field. So for instance, if you want this field to be highlighted in any case with a bold font or anything like that, you can additionally describe it here. But what is really, really important is the lookup list. So basically the data source for this field to be used. So let's select one. And here we can define the data source type. And I want the data in the final form of this application to come from our ERP system. So for that, I'll paste the proper description. However, for the purpose of testing this application, we can create a static list of values just so we have something to select on the form. So let's create a couple of company names and finish our work. And now let me quickly create a couple of more fields. As you can see, I created a couple of more fields and neatly arranged them into groups. Now we can pay more attention to how are they displayed on the form and what kind of data is available to which groups of people. So here we have something that we call field matrix. Here you can see every single field that we created for the purpose of being displayed in the left panel of the form. And for each and every one of those, we can define how should they behave, meaning whether they should be visible and editable in a particular step of our process, whether they should be read-only or required in a specific step. So let me quickly decide on the configuration here, and then we'll be ready to test the prototype. Now it is time to test our application. As you can see, the first field is the company field with a lookup list. And we can select WEBCON here. The street, city, and the VAD ID I want to be extracted automatically from our data source. So for now, I'll leave them empty. Then you can see credit limit details with those red asterisks, which simply define them as required. If I try to proceed without filling them out, the system will let me know, sorry, you cannot go without defining those. So let's define the credit limit as 600,000 and the payment terms as 30 days. And then we can move forward. And you can track our progress on the bar on the right-hand side. So we see we proceeded from defining credit limits to financial controller approval. And if you remember, after this step, we have a flow control step that will automatically direct our path. Since this hasn't been properly configured, just described, for the purpose of testing, you can manually choose which way to go. We'll go with a path that says over 500K. And as you can see, that led us to CFO approval. And after that, we can approve or reject. I select approve. And this is where our process ends. So that's how the whole process looks like. Of course, we assume this is going to be iterative. So we can check and try and then improve and modify. And this is how we'll reach the final prototype state until we move to the next step, which is the implementation. But before we do so, one great to note is that we can generate the documentation. You can select Word or PDF. I'll go with PDF. And it literally takes seconds to generate. And after that, you receive a full, complete specification of your application based on what we've done so far. So you see the graphical representation of the workflow. You see how the form will look like. Every single description and remark we've provided is listed here along with other configuration pieces. And as you can see, it's pretty extensive for such a quick work on the prototype. So all of that can be reused and refined until we have the full complete specification. So now it is time to pass all of that work to the power user and let them complete this application. So for that, we'll click Finish and Publish to the Designer Studio. Say yes. And then we'll move to the Designer Studio to complete the work. So here we are. This is the kingdom of the power user. The Designer Studio is a highly complex and comprehensive tool allowing to digitize and automate business processes end-to-end with multiple automations, business rules, integration points, and so on. One of the things that we give our power users to help them with the work is a to-do list that is compiled automatically based on the input previously done by the business people and analysts in the designer desks. So here we see the list of some of the tasks that we have to do. And of course, we can add more manually whenever it's necessary. So let's take the first one. And not only we can see the comment, but we can directly proceed to the place where the configuration is required. Right now, we need to provide a task assignment for all of those cases over 500,000 because the CFO approval is required. Up to this point, the task has been assigned to the current user because we use it for testing purposes as it is the easiest way of doing so. However, this is a quick change because we have a predefined function called users, and we can provide the CFO role directly in here. The use of a role is extremely important because it makes configuration way more resilient as compared to providing expressed name of the user. Because let's be honest, our employees may change, but most likely the roles will stay within the company. So even if CFO changes in this particular case, the configuration will simply be the same because the CFO role will be updated in the Active Directory. Since we're on the subject of business rules, let's go to the other place that requires our attention, which is this branch step that should decide where the task is assigned based on the value of the credit limit expressed on the form. For that, we'll go to the business rules editor, and here we have a set of predefined functions that we can use, and we can refer to any static or dynamic values that the system has, including those that appear on the form. So here I pushed if-then clause to create our condition, and then we'll refer to our credit limit. And then we should say that if it's higher or equal 500,000, it should use a path, and this path should be over 500,000. In any other cases, it should be the other path, and this path should be less than 500,000. This is how you can construct business rules in WEBCON. Of course, you may make them way more sophisticated than this one. You can create nested rules. You can embed SQL statements directly within the rules. Of course, you can reuse all of those. But for this particular example, this is all we need to complete our configuration task. Now let's tackle the form. If you remember, in WEBCON, everything is in the same place. So workflows, forms, integration, business rules, and so on exist encapsulated in one Designer Studio. So actually switching to the configuration of fields is as easy as it can be. And in our process, we have the company field for which we have the data source defined, but this is a mock-up data from the prototype, and we would like to have actual data from our database, for example, from the CRM system or any other where we keep the information about the companies that we cooperate with. And fortunately, I have this data source already available as I'm using it in other processes. So it's called list of companies. And this is the one that I will attach to this choice field to be used for end users to select the company that they need to. And as you can see, we're prompted with a warning that this data source should be configured. So let's do it. So I click Advanced Configuration, and here we have to define what kind of information should we take from our data source, how it should be displayed to the end users, whether it should populate any other fields, and whether it should be usable for searching and shown into the dialog pop-up. So the first one is not a name, but in our data source it's called company name. So we'll display it accordingly. We do not have to set any target field because this is the target field for this particular value to appear. We'll definitely use it for searching, and we'll show it into the dialog because this is the most convenient way of displaying this information for the end users. Then we'll select another field. Let's say we'll select the VAT number. So let's call this VAT ID. In this case, I want this to be populated automatically based on the form fields that I have already created. We'll not use it for searching because I don't expect many users to actually remember the VAT numbers, but showing this number in the dialog would definitely be helpful. So to continue, I will configure the rest of the fields and we'll move on right from there. In a very similar fashion, all other configuration pieces need to be completed until our to-do list is simply empty and the application is ready for user acceptance tests. Of course, it's worth to mention that we can put additional comments for the purpose of them being generated later on in the documentation, like for example in this case that this field should also populate other fields on the form. And of course, it's always a good practice to save your progress and make sure everything is in place. So now let's test our application. We can do it directly from here by selecting Start Workflow in Process, and we are presented with the form. And one of the first things that we have to do is to specify the company. So by clicking on the field, I can see the list of all companies that I have available for my choice. Once I start typing, my selection simply narrows down to the ones that meet the criteria. Upon actually selecting the company, the data is populated to the form exactly as we configured. So now it is time to define the credit limit. Now let me put 600,000 and select the payment terms, let's say net 30. One thing that is very natural to WEBCON, but is not exactly natural for other process systems, is the attachment area. For us, it is very natural to attach files in the context of business processes that we are handling. So this area is available by default. So you do not have to do anything to have it in place. So for example, here I can attach an additional document with credit limit request. And now my data is complete, so we can proceed further by clicking Send for approval. We're presented with the confirmation. And as you can see by the status bar on the right-hand side, we went to the financial controller approval. And we are exactly at this step of the process just before the branch. But let's complicate this case a little bit. Let me increase the credit limit and provide an additional comment with reason why. And now we'll click approve and check if our branch condition works. We are again presented with the confirmation and the indication that the branch configuration works lays in the fact that we actually proceeded to the CFO approval step, and the task is assigned to the CFO and myself because I need to be able to test and show this application to you. So now let's say the CFO approves, and I will do this on CFO's behalf again for testing purposes. But what I would like to direct your attention to is that for every single application in the system, we have an audit trail available. And again, it does not require any of extra work. It's simply an out-of-the-box feature of WEBCON. So for every single activity that has happened in the context of this particular application, we have the information about who and when did what. And as you can see, any changes to the data on the form are immediately marked red, and everything that has appeared for the first time is colored green. So it's very easy to understand what has happened with every single request and who was responsible for every single part of this process. The changes tracking also is applicable to the files. So if you have any editable files in your process and they change in the course of this process being executed, that will be highlighted into the audit trail as well. So that concludes our short video showing why our clients enjoyed the prototyping and configuration of applications in WEBCON BPS. Make sure to watch other videos that expand on other topics that I mentioned in this one. They'll be appearing on the screen, and also we'll list them in the description box down below. Thank you for watching.